Hello and welcome. Today's practice will be a gentle warm up that will include some sun salutations, couple of flow sequences, and we'll move with the breath. And so it just is a great one to include any time of the day. But we're going to go ahead and get started on our back. So coming onto your back, you can go ahead and keep the knees bent, feet planted. And I'm going to go ahead and take my feet to about the outer edges of my mat and then letting my knees come together, coming to a constructive rest pose. And so from here, you can take the hands on the belly and just start to notice the breath. Maybe you take a moment to lift the hips and slide the tailbone closer down towards your feet. So imagining just drawing that tailbone down, lengthening the spine a little bit more. Maybe flattening out the shoulder blades against the mat, allowing the chest and the belly to be nice and soft, releasing any gripping or tension around the hips and tops of the thighs, noticing the knees touching, the feet rooted down through the mat, rooted down towards earth. And if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and seal the lips. And so your inhales will be through your nose, exhales through the nose. Noticing and watching the breath, welcoming any thoughts or sensations that might come up. So feel free to stay right here where you're at, or maybe taking the soles of the feet together and letting the knees just drape open to the side. So coming to a reclined butterfly pose. And again, feel free to lift the hips, scooting the tailbone down towards the feet, lengthening the spine again. And just allowing the hips to slowly open up there. Maybe still keep your eyes closed here. Just start to meditate on any sensation that arises. And if the mind has wandered away, just know that that's totally normal. Gently bring it back to the breath, just bringing your awareness back to the breath each time that your mind wants to wander away. You can use your breath as an anchor that way. Maybe for the practice, you might even start to set an intention for yourself. Setting an intention, even if it's just to have in the back of the mind, maybe it's I will connect my breath to my movements, or I will use my breath as my anchor. It can just be something simple. And then whenever you're ready, slowly bring the knees together. Use your hands if you need a little assistance there. And then take the feet out to the edges of the mat. And then just start to windshield wiper the knees side to side here. So allowing both knees to fall to one side. Having control over this movement as well. Feel free to keep your hands on your belly if that's comfortable. Maybe just noticing the different textures that you might be feeling. We'll do this a few more times. Just windshield wipering the knees side to side. And then next time you come back up through center, heel toe the feet a little closer together, about your hip distance apart there. We're going to set up for bridge pose. So a good starting point is I like to place my hands palms down by my sides, and then if my fingertips can touch my heels, that's a good starting point for me. So maybe try that first and then just adjust and then play with the feet placement. So again, just kind of keeping the feet in about your hip, kind of parallel there to the hips. And so start to root down through the feet. Maybe spread the toes, feeling the mat, rooting down through the feet. On an inhale, we're going to lift the hips. And so just stopping where your body wants to naturally stop, using that full inhalation. Maybe take a pause at your inhalation at the top. And then on an exhale, just lowering the hips down to the mat. Take your time with that. Use that full exhalation. Rooting down through the feet. Inhale, lift the hips. And just finding here how high you want to lift the hips. And then exhale, release down. And then whenever you're ready on an inhale, lift the hips. And then take a pause here. So the hips are lifted. Continue breathing, but see if you can scoot the arms down. Maybe kind of imagine walking the hands closer to your heels. So creating some space between the ears and the tops of the shoulders. Activating the glutes here, squeezing the glutes. Coming back to the breath, so maintaining that slow, steady breath. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the nose. And so to come back down on an exhale, try to come back down vertebrae by vertebrae. So starting at the top of the spine, start to exhale, lower down slowly, allowing the tailbone to be the last thing that meets your mat. Taking your time with this. And just notice how different that feels from just exhaling and lowering the hips down rather than taking it super slow and kind of turning inward there to the movement. So let's try that one more time. Inhale, lift the hips. Find your range of motion, how high you want to lift the hips. And then on an exhalation, start to lower down vertebrae by vertebrae. It's really hard to say. And letting the tailbone be the last part to meet the mat. Good. And then whenever you're ready, just hug the knees into the chest. Maybe swaying side to side here. Or maybe just having some stillness and drawing the knees in closer to the chest. Maybe you're wrapping the hands around the knees, circling the knees. Just taking whatever movement feels organic, that feels good to you in your body. If you're circling the knees, switch side or switch rotations. So if you're doing clockwise, go counterclockwise. Just feeling all the parts and pieces. And again, just noticing all the different textures. So while just having the knees drawn into the chest, noticing how does that feel against your low back, against the hips, and the tailbone. How does that feel in your body? And then hug the knees into the chest one more time. And then we're going to make our way to tabletop. So however which way you'd like to get there, maybe rock and roll up to a seat and then come to tabletop. I'm just going to turn on my side here and then just make my way to tabletop. So in our tabletop position, we're looking for wrists under shoulders, knees under hips. So take a moment to set up your foundation there. And maybe start to rock forward, rocking backward, warming up the wrist a little bit there. Just taking some easy movements, mindful movements. And then maybe you start to tuck the toes under and include a little toe stretch there. Let me pull up my pant leg so you can see my toes. Maybe you start to include that toe stretch, and maybe when you're leaning back into the toes, spreading the toes wide there and getting a nice stretch in the toes. So maybe you start to coordinate this with your breath. So on an inhale, leaning forward, and then exhale, leaning back into the toes, sinking back into the heels. Inhale, leaning forward. Exhale, shifting backward, almost like a child's pose, but the toes are tucked. And if at any point this starts to become uncomfortable on the toes, feel free to untuck the toes and still just bring in that inhale, exhale, breath movement coordination. And then just coming back up to a neutral tabletop, untuck the toes. I cannot talk this morning, apparently. So coming back to neutral tabletop, we're going to take a few reverse cat-cows. So on an inhale, start to round the spine, tucking your chin towards the chest. And then on an exhale, start to lower the belly, lift the chin, sort of spreading the collarbones. And then inhale, round the spine, tucking the chin. And then exhale, lower the belly, lift the chin. And then one more time. Inhale, round the spine, bringing your chin to the chest. And then exhale, lower the belly, lift the chin, spreading the collarbones. And then coming back to a neutral tabletop. Go ahead and extend the left leg long down the mat and just stretching through the toes again. We won't be here too long, but maybe you feel some sensation in the toes, maybe in the calves. And then start to shift forward, pick up the left foot so the toes are pointed down. We're just kind of hovering the foot there. And then maybe you extend that right arm out. And so let's take an inhale here. And then exhale, bring that right elbow to the left knee. Kind of find a little crunch. And then inhale, extend the leg and the arm. And then exhale, find a little crunch, elbow to the knee. Inhale, extend. And then exhale, set the knee and the hand down. Walk the hands away from the body and then sink the hips down towards the heels. We're going to find a child's pose. So maybe even kind of shaking the hips side to side, kind of shimmying down. Maybe you take the feet together and the knees wide here, so the chest is really sort of just lowered down here towards the mat. Or maybe you have the feet together and the knees together, and maybe just find a little forward fold here in a child's pose. And your arms can be rested down by your sides. Maybe the forehead just places there on the mat. Just finding a version of child's pose that works for your body. We'll be here a few breaths. And just noticing here as you're breathing in your child's pose, how does the breath feel along the backside of the body? You can sort of just visualize the circumference around the rib cage and breathing into the rib cage. Feel that expansion and the contraction on the exhale. The body softens. And so on your next inhale, just coming back up to your tabletop, wrists under shoulders, knees under hips, and extend the right leg long down the mat. Just engaging through the toes, feeling a stretch along the calves. And then start to shift the weight forward, pick up the right foot, hover the toes pointed down. And then maybe you extend that left arm. And then we'll take an inhale here. On an exhale, bring that left elbow to the right knee. So finding that crunch. And then inhale, extend the arm and the leg. Exhale, find that crunch. Inhale, extend. And exhale, contract. One more time. Inhale, extend. And exhale, contract. Good. Set the hand and the knee down. And then go ahead and step the left foot out by the left side body here. There's a bug that won't leave me alone. So stepping the left foot out by the left side body. Let's just take a few moments to make some hip circles here. So rooting down through your hands and using your hands to kind of facilitate the movement. We just want to make some movements there in the hips. Making circles, these can be as big or as small as you would like. And then we'll pause and then start to rotate the opposite way. So just making those hip circles the opposite way. And then finding some stillness to pause here, sweep in that left knee, and then step the right foot out by the right side body. And feel free to kind of angle the foot as well. So it doesn't have to be, the toes don't have to be parallel to your mat. Feel free to step the toes out or the foot out to the side and kind of have your toes pointed out towards the side there. Let's just start to make your hip circles once you feel comfortable and ready. Again, rooting down through your hands, so you're kind of bringing in that wrist stretch again. And just noticing how the hip feels, slowly sort of opening up the body. And then we'll pause and then switch directions. And then whenever you're ready, just finding stillness, and then we can sweep that right knee back in. So coming back to a neutral tabletop position here, let's take an inhale to tuck the toes under, and then exhale, find a downward dog. So lifting the hips here. And feel free to place a decent bend in the knees, especially if your hamstrings are pretty tight. I like to spread my fingers wide, spreading my toes wide. And then on an inhale, rise on the balls of the feet. Exhale to bend the knees and then step forward to find a gentle forward fold. So keep a pretty generous bend in the knees there. And then let's inhale to a halfway lift. So find a place along the legs. Maybe it's down towards the shins. Maybe it's up towards the quads. Find an area where you can place the hands, where you can find some length in the spine, so you can imagine pulling back the pelvis there and lengthening from the tailbone all the way to the crown of the head. Your gaze is down towards your mat. So you can kind of imagine a flat back here, although we don't want the body to go rigid. We don't want to force anything in the spine. So just imagine lengthening, getting nice and long through the spine. And then on an exhale, just finding another easy forward fold. And let's inhale, rise all the way up, extended mountain, Reaching up, maybe you add a little back bend here. And then exhale, forward fold. Inhale, plant the hands, and then step back to a plank position. So feel free to take a modified plank here with the knees down, or on an exhale, just lowering all the way down, taking your time with control. Lowering all the way down to the mat, untuck the toes. And then on an inhale, finding a baby cobra. So just lifting the head and the chest off of the mat. And finding a little back bend here. Staying for a few breaths. And then on an exhale, just lowering all the way down. Inhale, push through the hands, come to tabletop. And then exhale, finding a downward dog. So we'll just take a few moments here in our downward dog. Again, just to spread the fingers wide, spreading the toes, maybe pedaling out the feet here. Sometimes it can feel nice to find some stillness in your downward dog and then just swaying the hips side to side. And then on your next inhale, rise in the balls of the feet. Exhale, bend the knees. Step just the right foot forward. Lower that back knee, top of the back foot. And then inhale, reach up. Low lunge. Exhale, release the hands to the mat. Tuck that back toe under, lift the back knee, and step forward to find a forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, placing your hands anywhere along the legs. Find that length in the spine. Exhale, fold. Inhale, rise all the way up, extended mountain. Be nice and tall here, reaching up. And then exhale, forward fold. Inhale, plant the hands, step back to your plank. Feel free to take that modified plank or just taking an exhale and lowering all the way down. Inhale to find your cobra pose. So maybe you keep a baby cobra pose or coming up a little bit more here and creating a little bit more of a back bend. And feel free to play with the feet placement there. We're going to stay here for a few breaths. You can just sort of imagining the tailbone lengthening down the legs. The legs are nice and heavy here. And then on an exhale, just lowering all the way down slowly. Inhale, push through the hands to come to tabletop. Exhale down, or exhale for downward facing dog. Inhale, rise on the toes. Exhale, bend the knees, step just the left foot forward. Lower that back knee, top of the back foot. Inhale, reach up. Low lunge. And exhale, releasing the hands down to the mat. Tuck that back toe under, lift the back knee. Step forward to find a forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. And exhale, fold. Inhale, rise all the way up, extended mountain, maybe a little back bend. And then exhale to find a chair pose. So bend in the knees, sinking the hips down. We want the spine to be nice and long here. So reaching up, or maybe you have the hands more out in front of you. Maybe even bringing the hands to heart center if the arms are feeling a little fussy today. So it's just your preference and working with your body, finding what's available. And then on an inhale, start to straighten the legs, reach up, let the spine be nice and long again. And then on an exhale, forward folds. And then from here, just maybe start to heel toe the feet a little wider than your hip distance apart. Maybe grabbing opposite elbows and finding a ragdoll pose here. So maybe you're just letting the head be heavy, releasing any low tension in the back. And if reaching for opposite elbows does not feel good, feel free just to let the arms dangle here. Maybe swaying side to side. And just releasing any extra tension, any leftover stagnant energy. And then just placing the hands back down on the mat, heel toe the feet closer together, and then just slowly coming down to a seated position. So to close out this practice, I hope you have enjoyed it today. Please join me in bringing hands to heart center. Take a deep breath in. Long exhale out. Namaste.